So my journey is twofold. The
Awesome.
the easier story to tell is being a psychotherapist. I hear lots of people's stories about what's going wrong in their life, why they come to therapy. And I begin to notice more and more about they needed to figure out how much of that belonged to them and how much belonged to somebody else. And so as a therapist, I have to tease those things apart because if either we don't identify what's in their power to do something about, or we spend too much time, what I call in someone else's yard, then we
Mhm.
can't do anything about that. What someone else is thinking, feeling, doing, we have no power over that. So, in order not to waste time, we have to right from the gate figure out how much of what is going on with my patient is their issue and how much of it belongs to somebody else. That's the easier story for me to tell. The
Mhm.
other story, the deeper story, is a personal story. I was raised by a mother who had some issues, still has issues. And it's kind of a hard story to tell because I want to be respectful of my mother
Mhm.
and I have no desire at all to hurt her or cause any pain. What I've had to own, though, is coming into my own on this journey, is owning my own story. And we all have a right to our own stories. And so sometimes when we're telling our stories, other people might not understand it or disagree with it. And we have to be okay with that. My mother has issues that cause a lot of emotional instability, a lot of severe mood swings, a lot of narcissism and gaslighting. Not pleasant, a lot of victim playing, and something that I was thinking of the other day to describe it would be called I termed it emotional extortion. It's
Mhm.
almost like, she needed a lot of attention, and the reason why she needed huge amounts of attention started long before I was ever thought of, right? But it was there nonetheless. And so when she wasn't getting the amount of attention that she wanted from me, she would create things. She would become a victim and she would either call 911, get herself put in the hospital, do all these things. And this would happen over and over and over again to force me into a position where I had to come and be the dutiful daughter and show up. And then the medical staff are contacting me. And it just goes on and on and on. And it was a situation like she was going to find a way to force me to give her that attention. As we kind of chatted about yesterday on the podcast, I was told by an emergency room doctor to stop bringing her to the ER because she was using it to manipulate me. I was told by one of the psychologists in one of these step down rehab facilities because she'd go to the hospital, then they would send her to a rehab facility to get strong, whatever, and then send her home. That's just kind of what they did when you reach kind of a certain age bracket or whatever like that. And the psychologist told me that she was a master manipulator. And I have more and more and more of these stories. That's just a little sample snippet to understand. So I had to learn. I had to figure out how to set boundaries and I was setting them and she did not like them. So I know very well what it is like to try to set boundaries when no boundaries have been set before. What happens when people don't like it? What happens when people push against our boundaries? Because I'm a very real person. I'm like, if we can't tell stories that's the real life where people actually live, I don't like living in fantasy land where everything's all roses and sunbeams. I don't know who lives in that world, but I don't. And
Yeah.
so we're going to talk about real stuff. So it's sort of like I know what it feels like when you try to set a boundary and you're attacked for the boundary and other people are told mistruths about you because of your boundary setting and it just went on and on. So not only have I seen my patients struggle with boundary issues, I personally have walked through a lot of this and so I know the pain. I know what it feels like so I can help my clients, I can help my patients as they're trying to set these boundaries. I know what it feels like and I know how to set them, how to defend them. Cuz setting them is one thing, but then you have to defend them. That's when someone comes back at you when
Yeah.
they don't like the boundaries you're setting. So then you have to defend them.
Well, and defending is so important, but if we could pause here, just because I mean, I know this is your story and you've become used to it, but I can't imagine how painful that was setting these boundaries with your mother, especially in this context of her going to the hospital. And, sometimes we don't give ourselves credit for the tough things we do, right? And I wanted to pause here and not for you to relive the pain, but if someone's listening, it's very easy for us to say, yeah, but obviously Dana's a strong person. She could do this, right? Like she figured out I'm not like that. Like that's what I find people do when they don't want to move forward with the tough action. Does that make sense? So I don't want to reground you in the pain, but I just want to slow down and kind of honor that moment and honor the steps you took and how difficult it was, right? And here you are, a trained professional in this field, and it doesn't lessen the real life pain and emotions of this is your mother. I mean, at the end of the day, who you want acceptance and love from, right?
Mhm.
And you're having to learn the boundary setting there. So I don't know if you wanted to share anything deeper on that with the audience. And I know, as you said, we want to honor your mother. So I want to honor you and as much as you'd like to share. But I did you have a support system when you were going through this? Like who did you go to? Or was it just digging within yourself, praying, meditating? Because, these are the moments where we have to figure out, okay, what's my foundation? Like what is holding me up?
Mhm. Oh, those are fantastic comments. So at first, I didn't realize that I was in an abusive situation. I kind of felt it down deep
Mhm.
inside, but it was all I ever knew. It was my norm. And so it took someone else's observation, someone who was very close to me, who was related to me, who had seen it happen, to tell me. And I was grown. I had a master's degree in clinical psychology and didn't realize that I was being emotionally abused. And when she told me that, I remember that moment. I just sat there like, what? I mean,
Yeah.
and in my heart, I knew that what she was saying was true, but I guess a part of my mind didn't want to accept that because then that would mean, oh, that means I have to do something about it. And
Yes.
so the people, I have a close circle of people that have watched me experience this with my mother.
Mhm.
And they are the ones that I would turn to. They are the ones that I would lean on and say, I'm right in the middle of this. Do I even see this clearly? Is there something I'm missing? Am I leaning too heavily? Am I not doing something that I should be? Am I doing something that I shouldn't be doing? And I sought out therapy on my own. The only time in my life I've sought that out was, and I should have, but I needed help and I couldn't figure out, when you're right in the middle of a storm, you sometimes you got these weird goggles on, you can't see. And so the people that were very close to me were the ones that I loved to my bone marrow because they were able to come
Mhm.
around me and say, Dana, this is not okay. You've got to set some boundaries. This is not okay for you to continue to allow this to happen. And so I was very thankful for them. But I will say that when I had to set these boundaries, the process of it is what made me strong. And there
Yeah.
were times where I was called names by people that she would, like, close people in the family, that she would tell half truths about me, and it made me look really bad. And it
Mhm.
might have been the way she perceived it, right? But it
Mhm.
wasn't really the whole truth as far as I was concerned. And they would call me a bitch. I was called unforgiving. I was called hateful. I was called unkind. And so, in answer to one of your questions, I had to sit, and instead of pushing those things away from me, I pulled them close. I pulled all those words and all those accusations close to my heart, and I sat with them and I literally rocked back and forth,
Mhm.
feeling all the feelings of those people that were supposed to love me,
Mhm.
calling me these things
Mhm.
because they were looking at it through the lens that she was giving them. And
Yeah.
so I had to sit and ask myself, am I in fact unforgiving? I had to decide that. Am I unkind? And after a while of sitting there and rocking back and forth and allowing myself to absorb all those feelings, I determined no, I am not these things. This is the only relationship in my life where I was accused of being these things. No one else in my entire life, and I've lived a few decades, right? Nobody else in my entire life has accused me of being these things except for the people that are around my mother at the time. And so my conclusion, emotionally and logically, was it's not me, it's my relationship with her and her dysfunction and what she's doing that's causing these people to come and accuse me of these things. I will have to be honest though and say,
Yeah.
I was called a bitch too, and I can be a bitch. Let's just be
I
honest
love
about
the
that.
ownership.
I mean, I have to own
Love it.
that. I can't do that. So I did own that. Yes, I can be a bitch sometimes. That's true. But all the rest of that stuff, I refuse the other stuff, but the bitch thing, okay, I'll give them that.
Oh my gosh.